BookTube, and welcome back to BookTrek 2021, a 5-month mission embarked upon by myself and a bunch of other booktubers to read Star Trek fiction for the rest of the year. And we're winding our way through the vast amount of it by going franchise by franchise. So all the rest of August, we are dealing with the original series, our original crew, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, in all of the time periods that they have had adventures. So it's the original series, the animated series, and the movies. And I have been bouncing around, but not as much as I thought I would. I thought I would bounce all around the canon of original Star Trek fiction. But I set some rules for myself at the beginning of this thing. I don't want to talk about books that I've read a million times. And I don't want to talk this time around about, I don't want to revisit authors I really love. Instead, I want to go back to books that I read quickly, consumed in one gulp, haven't revisited, to see if there's anything there. I've been pleasantly surprised a few times by finding things that were there, by finding that I really enjoyed a book the second time around much more than I did the first time. Unfortunately, today's Star Trek book is not a case of that. This is by Dean Wesley Smith and Christine Catherine Rush, and it is The Rings of Tautee. And it's a Star Trek novel in which the Enterprise, you can see from the visual iconography on the cover, they're in their 5-year mission. This is our crew as young people. They existed as old people in this timeline by now. We'd seen them in movies to that effect, but not in this novel. This is just an adventure that they have where they encounter a planetary abnormality in a system that has an inhabited planet, but the planet is inhabited by a pre-warp spacefaring civilization. Which means the Prime Directive forbids Jim Kirk and the Enterprise from interfering. The Prime Directive is a kind of diplomatic no-go zone in Gene Roddenberry's Federation, where the Federation, this large group of interstellar races, are not allowed to make themselves known or interfere in any way with the cultural development of species, of races, of worlds that have not achieved warp capability, and then not achieved practical spaceflight. Once they achieve that, then first contact can be made. But before that, they must be allowed to develop on their own. And Prime Directive comes up a few times in the original series, where mostly because Kirk likes to throw it down and dance upon it. He's not a great respecter of the Prime Directive, when the alternative is horrible. And in this case, in the Rings of Tautee, the alternative is horrible. Thousands of inhabitants of that planet will die if Kirk doesn't break the Prime Directive. And there are Klingons involved. There's almost a Klingon fleet. That was a little endemic problem in Star Trek fiction. A lot of Star Trek fiction, especially in the fan fiction days, just routinely considered that one Klingon heavy cruiser would be nothing, no kind of a challenge for the Enterprise. So you would, in fan fiction at that time, you would often, in the 70s, you would see the Enterprise facing off against 10 Klingon ships in a row or whatnot. That later novels make up for that. Yes, Kirk is a genius, and yes, if you are facing him on the bridge of the Enterprise and you have one Klingon ship and it's the same class as his own ship, same armament, same shield complement, same all of that, you're gonna lose. You're just plain gonna lose. But that has nothing to do with the technology. That has to do with Jim Kirk, who's almost unbeatable in starship combat. You don't really need, apart from that X factor, you don't really need to pile on the odds, and the odds are egregiously piled on in this novel. And unfortunately, maybe it's a product of this being a collaboration. I've mentioned before, collaborations can be really difficult. They're common in Star Trek fiction and in literature just in general, but unless you've been in one, you might not know how hard it can be to make it work. It could be that one or both of these authors were at loggerheads. Or it could be that they were writing to each other, always a mistake in collaborators. You can't try to write to the middle between the two of you. You'll get nowhere if you do that. One way or another, whatever the explanation is, the characters here don't really ring true most of the time. There'll be a moment here and there, but usually they don't ring true. And also the whole book feels like the script of a James Blish short story. The whole thing feels like a 1-hour-long episode of the original show, with minimal special effects. It's something that was just, where the writers had an idea and they just adapted it to the Star Trek cast. My favorite Star Trek fiction is always stuff that arises out of the Star Trek universe itself, the characters, the continuity. You don't always have to be calling back to previous adventures. This book doesn't do that at all. But it has to arise out of that. It can't just be, well, we have an anomaly, and this would work just as well as an hour-long episode of, Battlestar Galactica. That never works for me. I like there to be a kind of a resonance. And despite the efforts here by hauling in another another Federation starship, the Farragut, on which Kirk used to serve, and hauling in the Klingons, those are designed to be kind of callbacks to the rest of the Star Trek universe. It doesn't really land in this book. I remember actually, I think this came out 20 years ago, and I remember thinking that when I read it. I remember I gobbled it right down. I grabbed every Star Trek fiction that I could find and gobbled it down. And I remember not being satisfied at all, just reading it and thinking, okay, well, that was a toss-away Star Trek novel. But I think I did toss it away. I think it was in the next sale that I did to whatever bookstore was near me at the time. And I went into this hoping that this would be one of those examples where I revisited the book and really liked it. I've had a couple of really standout examples of that in BookTrek 2021. I'm kind of sorry. I don't want to overload the airloads by doing multiple Star Trek videos a day, but I'm kind of sorry that the original series part of our 5-month mission is ending soon. Next Tuesday it ends, and I'm kind of sorry about that, because there's a lot of other Star Trek novels out there, original Star Trek novels out there, and I can't help but think, how many of them would I revisit for the first time in 30 years and actually love the way I have some of the books that I've revisited in August? Instead, I'm going to move on to a whole new level of discovery, no pun intended, by dealing with the next generation. You and I are going to grapple with the next generation, and all you next generation fans out there who have lamented, I mean, there are plenty of things you lament every day when you watch my videos. I am largely unsuitable, but one of the things that you lament, I know, you next generation fans out there, you lament that I don't like your favorite franchise. It's my least favorite Star Trek franchise before Kurtzman got his hands on the whole property. And it went on for 7 years, just episode after episode after episode. And a lot of you have emailed me over the years when I've made disparaging comments about the boring years and said, it's not boring. We really liked it. It was my Star Trek growing up, just like the original series was yours. I think quite a few of you have wanted the penny to drop. Quite a few of you wanted me to open my eyes and find something worthwhile in the next generation. I am perfectly open to that. This is not Faulkner or David Foster Wallace. I don't want to dislike Star Trek, any franchise of Star Trek. So we shall see. We shall see what happens. I still have a few more original series novels to go through in August. I'm going to make the most of that. So I'm going to bounce around. I'm not going to return to the Rings of Tautee ever again. I've read it now twice. That is enough. So I'm going to go on to some other novel. I'm not going to stress about where in the timeline it falls. It'll probably be these numbered pocket novels that go from, somewhere between 30 and 70. They're probably in there for the rest of the week. I might this week do some Star Trek original series adjacent stuff that's still covered under the umbrella of the original series, but that it isn't adjacent enough to be its own category in 2022. In 2022, I'm hoping that BookTrek will return with the same crew and maybe even some strange alien visitors. And I'm hoping that if we do that we go to other parts of the Star Trek world. Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard, Star Trek Lower Decks, Star Trek short treks, the little short things that were done that I think are largely findable on YouTube. I watched a bunch of them up in Vermont with Mark Richardson, and some of them are fantastically good. Just fantastically good. They're only 5 minutes long, 10 minutes long. And by 2022, there may be another Star Trek series on TV, maybe even another Star Trek movie in the works. The rumored J.J. Abrams rumored 4th Star Trek novel seemed to be cursed right from the beginning. The two main stars, Kirk and Spock, wanted out, or they wanted 5 times the money. And the movies weren't profitable enough to give them 5 times the money, and that's also a little obnoxious. At least that's the rumor. I don't know that that's absolutely true. And then in addition to that, other actors in the cast started getting really good work elsewhere. So, I mean, the actor who plays Bones McCoy got The Boys, and he's fantastic in it. Why would he put on Dr. McCoy's blue tunic again? The actress who plays Uhura got a gig in Marvel movies and can just go on from there. And on top of that, of course, most prominently, if you're talking about a cursed property, the young actor who played Chekhov died in what his publicist tried to convince the world was a freak accident on his driveway, where a motorized vehicle on his driveway ran out of control, pinned him against a wall, and killed him. I mean no disrespect to the shades of the dead when I say, I'll just say politely and calmly, I don't believe that. But one way or another, he's certainly not around anymore to play Chekhov, and then what do? Introduce Arix? No. So, I think the rumors of another J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie are out. I think they're gone. And rumors have started replacing it of rebooting the whole thing again. Whole new cast. A new Captain Kirk, a new Mr. Spock. The J.J. Abrams movies didn't make a pile of money, but they weren't disasters either. They weren't flops, except for the last one. The first two weren't disasters. People packed the theaters to see them. And they displayed a surprising amount of elasticity on the terms of old-time fans like me. I went to see those movies in the theater. And there are parts, they're very, very dumb movies. Really, really dumb movies. The first J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie makes no sense on any level that you examine it. It is just stupid from beginning to end. But there are parts in it that are very good. Even so, even though the writing, the plot, the scenes don't make any sense, there are still parts of it that are very, very good. Very effective. Some of the action scenes are very effective. And some of the personal scenes, some of the personal moments are very effective. I always say my favorite moment from that first Star Trek movie is Ben Cross as Sarek, Spock's father, telling him, I married your mother because I loved her. Amazing. Just absolutely amazing. Didn't diminish the character at all. Wasn't what some reactionary channels on YouTube said that was a total betrayal of the character. No, it wasn't at all. It was wonderful. That was a wonderful moment. And in terms of bravura action sequences, what about Star Trek Into Darkness, the one where Benedict Cumberbatch plays Khan? Those of you who saw that movie will remember an absolutely set-piece action sequence where Khan and Kirk are in space suits rocketing towards the hull of an enemy starship, and they're counting on Scotty to get the door open so that they don't splatter against the hull. They're zipping through a debris field, and they're getting closer and closer to the door, and it's not opening. They're screaming for Scotty to open the door, and he does at the last minute. It's just everything about that sequence, from their launch to their travel through that debris field to their arrival on that other ship, is perfectly done. Just popcorn worthy, price of admission worthy if you saw it in the movie theater. So I'm not saying those movies were worthless, but they did display something that I don't think a lot of diehards at Paramount thought was going to happen, which is that the fan base is willing to have these characters rebooted with different actors. With better movies. I would want better movies than what J.J. Abrams provided. But imagine that. If the fan base is okay with that, then you could reboot Star Trek again. And maybe maybe fix a lot of the problems that J.J. Abrams created in the original one. A better script. More character moments. Of course, there are rumors that is actually afoot. Some of the rumors are designed to enrage certain parts of the YouTube reaction sphere. One rumor, which was very intentionally leaked to get these people talking, is that Kirk is going to be not only bisexual, but aggressively bisexual, pansexual even. And this despite the fact that Jim Kirk's creator, Gene Roddenberry, in the only Star Trek novel he wrote, explicitly has Kirk himself say that he's only attracted to women. I guess we shall see. We shall see. All of that could be in a ferment in 2022. So my point is being, in this long digression, that BookTrek has legs, I hope. But in the meantime, I'm going to finish out the rest of August by reading these classic old Trek novels. I was going to read all sorts of newer old Trek novels, or maybe very old Trek novels, but I'm just going to stick in this middle range. A lot of these things I read only once, very quickly, as soon as they came out. So they're due for a revisit. They're more due for a revisit than a lot of my favorite Star Trek novels that I will reread at the drop of a hat. It's better that I'm doing it this way. And then next week, all new ground. All new ground. I think I've read a lot, probably 90% of the Next Generation novels. I found almost none of them that I liked. So I will be going into those with wide open eyes. We'll see if there are any gems there to be found. I'm going to wrap this up. This was my BookTrek entry for today, my log entry for today. I'll be back with one of these a day until we run out of August. And I'm not leaving links to any of my co-host channels, but I'll leave the hashtag. If you follow the hashtag, you'll find all of the videos. There are videos plenty to watch aside from my daily natterings. So I'm gonna wrap this up. I can't recommend The Rings of Tautee. I've read it twice now. I don't recommend you read it even once. There was nothing innovative or really good about it. No good character moments. Nothing in the way of, for instance, yesterday we talked about effective atmosphere building. There's none of that here. So your time is better spent reading something else. Maybe in tomorrow's book. We shall see. I have no idea what tomorrow's book will be. But we'll find out together. So I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTrek.